system between the presidential and the parliamentary system. You only have to look at it. The parliamentary system, it's called the Westminster system of government, the cabinet system. The First Republic had its own flaw. But they drafted the Constitutional Conference in 1908. The National Institute of International Affairs, then Professor Bolaji Akinyemi was the Director General, had a series of conferences where people were asked to make contributions. And then it was intellectually driven. That's a far cry from what we have now, where legislators are just making the proposal without looking at it from the pros and cons. And I know that a lot of citadels of learning, faculties of law, faculties of political science across the country have done immense work on the distinctions between these two different systems of government. But then in that conference in 1978, I was a COB news reporter then. A lot of issues were raised. And there was this push by those of them who studied from the United States of America, brandishing brand new degrees and trying to exalt themselves over the kind of government, all the guarantees of freedom and liberty that is represented or enshrined or guaranteed in the U.S. Constitution, and they appear to have the upper hand. But nobody knew that it would turn out to be a very big monster for Nigerians, for instance. I think the gentlemen who are making the proposal, they have a very good idea of what it is all about. Because firstly, we've discovered that the presidential system of government is very expensive. And secondly, it resides power in the hands of governors and presidents, that we begin to think that some people are superhuman beings, so to speak. And we've seen it happen very, very well during the course of this presidential system. Though the initial presidential system we had under the Shehu Shagari government era was a bit more moderate than what we have now. Now we have powers and principalities, strongholds of power residing in governors, residing in the president, residing in officials of government, that a single individual can sit down somewhere and announce or declare an election result and say, this is your president, whether you like it or not. And there's nothing anybody can do about it.
But at the end of the day, right, whether parliamentary or presidential, it is human beings who sat down to decide which should be. So my other question is, if we are ever going to move over to parliamentary, it's people that will sit down to decide. So do you even come to fruition with what's happening now in Nigeria?
But the issue at government and governance and democracy, that certain limitations are in place to curb the excess of human beings. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. You find that mostly or majorly in a parliamentary system. The checks and balances are there in the presidential system, but under the parliamentary system, it would be difficult to have a totalitarian president, for instance, or maybe have a governance making a model that tends towards tyranny. It's not too difficult because the prime minister is part of the legislature and is answerable to the legislature. Then there's that system of collective responsibility and the mode of recall. Vote of no confidence, he gets off that seat and returns to the seat. If they don't like his face, they can throw him out. So the discretion is much wider. This mode of presidential system that we are practicing, which makes it sometimes very, very impossible for an impeachment process to be effected against the president.
I was even going to that because we have the legislature and the House of Reps. I mean, they're all there. They could actually start an impeachment process if they actually want to.
It's there in the Constitution, but who have ever tried it and succeeded?
So
I think there was an attempt over it, the Buhari years, but how did it go? The DSS officials took over the entirety of the National Assembly, and that was where the whole thing stopped. The presidential system of government was not the ideal for Nigeria, I must state. And it came just because some gentlemen felt that maybe we can adopt the American system without looking at the nitty-gritty of our social circumstance, the social circumstance of what we are made of. You raised a very good point there when you say that it's still the same human beings. So it doesn't matter the system. The only thing is that we're looking for a pattern that can abridge some of these excesses that you see represented in the presidential system. But what is most important is the character of the political elite. state, the people who applied, the people who run the government. You can bring a near perfect system to this place, and it will never work because they still circumvent and thwart it to suit their own individual whims and caprices. And that's the point I'm trying to make. So it's essentially the one of not just adopting a particular mood, but understanding the perception of how this mood is anchored. The predication of that mood, is it people oriented? Is it connected with the people? Does it have a nexus with the people? You see that the presidential system we are practicing now has a very big disconnect to the people. Firstly, with the constitution that is being practiced. And you cannot have a wholesome constitutional system, democratic system, with a constitution that lacks in legitimacy. That's the first point of call. So if you are to go in accordance with the proposals being put forward by this gentleman, of course, you are looking at creating a new constitution, having a totally and completely new set of orientation that will change our mindset from this one of a governor who is a demigod and can say anything and talk anybody down and do anything. Virtually, the governors are the ones running the states. Commissioners do not have anything to do. The same thing is there at the presidential level. Everything, every ramification of office resides in the government. You know, the legislative list, the exclusive legislative list, belongs to the central government, has scattered everything thinkable. That you find that the states do not have any authority in legislative power.
Now, back to the whole idea of creating a more efficient and accountable government structure in Nigeria. Now, over the years, stakeholders have called for constitutional reforms. Some others have called for a new constitution totally. And some other people have even made this call for us to practice true federalism, that what we're doing is not what it is really. What exactly is the problem? Because now we have this one. Let's go back to parliamentary system.
No, we will continue to tinker with these ideas when you have a political class that is not ready to administer good government to the people. Nobody envisaged in 1966 when the first coup happened. By the way, it was even the legislature that invited the military at that time. Nobody envisaged that we can have a system that's running as wobbly as this one. The truth is that our democratic system has been running backwards rather than moving, advancing forwards, and that's quite a problem. Nobody ever envisaged that, and it's because we are not getting these things right. For instance, in the area of the Constitution. Secondly, in the mood or brand of the presidential system that we are practicing, taking in a wholesome manner the entirety of the United States system without locating it to our peculiarity, our circumstance, our social setting, our character, political character. You know, it makes the whole thing look shoddy. And as far as I'm concerned, the first port of call should be a revisitation of those principles that tend to gravitate development towards the positive direction. Very, very important, which means the legitimacy must be recognized, the power of the people must be properly harnessed to the extent that the sovereignty must reside in them beyond what the Constitution says. Chapter 2 says that sovereignty is in the people, from where government derives its power or authority. But is that what you're seeing now? A proper judicial system, rule of law. But the first port of call is not just sitting down and making prescriptions. If the House of Representatives can come up with this kind of idea, I think we can now tinker with the thought of a conference of nationalities, people coming together to talk, to judge. And these are the little things that we tend to overlook, and these present themselves in a very big way as refusal of governments to allow the people to meet. Jonathan, and then people are talking about, people are advocating for federalism, true federalism in the real context of it. What we are practicing, do you call it federalism? Professor Isawa Elaigu described it as unitary federalism. I don't see where you can have that kind of coinage anywhere. But that's the mode we are practicing. It's federalism, but it's not federalism. It's more of a unitary system of government than one that recognizes the component subnational units that make up the structure, which are positioned in different forms of culture, history, religion, and all that, and which, to a large extent, should deserve to move in their own direction, at their own pace.
So if, let's say, we are to actually, because in Nigeria, just like you said, we always have, it's not just to sit down and, come up with ideas. I mean, we have such stuff, but actually the willpower to get things done is usually the problem. So let's say that, okay, this parliamentary system of government, this transition can actually happen. What would be the kind of mechanisms that should be put in place to ensure a smooth transition?
You cannot talk about a transition from parliament, for a presidential system to a parliamentary system. There must be a bridge somewhere. There must be a gap that needs to be bridged. You also talk about having an interim government to doctor it, to make it work. You also have to talk about the fact that the current National Assembly cannot be the parliament for the purposes of the parliamentary system, the Westminster system of government. You also have to understand that the courts will need a reorientation, total and complete reorientation. What we have now is not the mode of courts, the manner of court we had in the First Republic. And you also have to think about a whole lot of restructuring in the sense that the component structure of the Federal Republic of Nigeria will have to be altered, radically, in terms that under the 1963 Constitution, which was parliamentary, the regions made up the component units.
All right, sorry, let's go on a commercial break. We'll be right back. Do stay tuned. the possibility of transitioning to the parliamentary system of government in Nigeria has been proposed by some lawmakers. About 60 of them have initiated a move to end the current presidential system and revert to the parliamentary system that Nigeria used in the First Republic. Now, one of the things they mentioned as their reason for calling for this transition is the fact that the presidential system is expensive. And they also mentioned that the powers of the president is overbearing. And so many other things that they've talked about. Well, my guest in the studio, Mr. OGWUCHE. So before we went on that break, you were talking about some of the mechanisms that would need to be put in place if a smooth transition would be possible. So, and then off the mic, I asked you because from what you were saying, it sounded like, this is really far-fetched. And I asked if it's impossible. You said, no, it's not impossible. Is it too difficult? You say it's not too difficult. So could you explain again, what are maybe the hurdles that these lawmakers would even meet if they've already started the process, but they're looking towards 2031. But so if they now decide, okay, now we're doing this, and they actually start, so what are the hurdles they're likely to meet?
First of all, I commend the members of the House of Representatives for coming with that kind of idea, which of course will entail some sacrifice on their own side, because they are also saying that at the end of the day that their own tenure could be abridged. Probably that's why they shifted it to 2031. By then they must have exhausted their tenures or whatever. But then I know that it's not an easy thing. You say this transition, the transition is not something that will flow from the presidential system to the Westminster system. It's something that a gap has to be abridged, like I talked about. A government of national unity has to be formed. A conference of ethnic nationalities has to be formed. The likes of Nahoro has been making case for it for the conference. Excuse me. Sorry. The Sovereign Conference of Ethnic Nationalities, which is very important if you actually want to achieve what you do want to achieve in that venture. And it's not something you just wake up in one day and do it. But I quite agree with those members who are making this proposal that the presidential system of government is very expensive. Look at the cost of governance. It's totally unreasonable as far as I'm concerned. If that is what it takes for governance to be entrenched, or for democracy to be entrenched at the expense of the good or the welfare of the people, then I think we could kiss it goodbye. A lot of societies will find it intolerable that so much money is being expended to maintain political offices and political officers, skies, takuds, and all that. And we have a political elite that's already properly geared towards that, and it will be a difficult thing to upturn it in a very mild manner. So it takes a lot of guts on the part of the legislature to take that action. If they are ready and willing and properly positioned to do that, then I think it's just to start engineering the process from the rubrics of its essentials. For instance, like I said, the convening of a sovereign national conference. Even if it's not sovereign, okay, considering the recommendations of the Jonathan convened conference, which came up with a lot of recommendations, and I don't know why these political elites or those in authority think that maybe it's something that should not be implemented. But I think they made very far-reaching implementation that can take care of this country. Recall that. We became a country by virtue of an amalgamation of which Nigerians were not involved, and we woke up to see ourselves in this how do I put it, this structure in this country, and it's our country. We accept it is our country, but then you have to do some fine tunings here and there to make it amenable and make people understand and be part of the system, to confer it some shade of legitimacy, which is very important. And you cannot just run with it and go ahead with it because it is benefiting to you. At the end of the day, you get to a position that will turn to be a cul-de-sac. If you are not careful, it could take you to the doldrums. of ineluctable fate, and that is what exactly we are trying to abridge, to ensure that we keep floating as much as possible. We can leave a very good society for our children.
But it's amazing. After 60 years of independence, we're still really struggling with fine-tuning the system and what would work.
It's because of the nature of the system, the political elites, the metropolitan colonial authorities left. And the system was not essentially meant to benefit the people. It was meant, for ease of administrative convenience of the Queen. You find more stable systems in the Francophone countries, even though they have their own internal dynamics, that translate to problems, which much more problems than we have, but they're a little more stable. We had a four-regional system under the 1963 Constitution. When the 1960 Constitution was the same, when the British left, and these systems, these component units, these sub-nationalities were compartmentalized in their own setting, within their own environment, so that they can move to a large degree with their autonomy and some share of independence. They had Supreme Courts. Each of the regions had their own Supreme Court. They had their own internal mechanism for education. They had their own budgets and all that, so that the center is not so important. It was that what made Ahmedu Bello at that time to prefer to be the premier of the North than to be the president of the Federal Republic, or the prime minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And that's how it ought to have been moving, in that direction. Within the composition of these subnational units, you can have that things like local governments, or even subdivided into states. That one is within the ambit of the authority of these subnational units to determine. But how? Now you have a whole lot of these groups put together, an agglomeration of ethnic nationalities, religious divisions, a whole lot of things put together. It's difficult in a modern 21st century world to run a system of that nature and expect to have dividends.
Interesting. Well, I still have more questions for you, but just to let you know, I would like you to answer the question I have for you. Get on Facebook and join the conversation. My question is, should Nigeria change its current system of government? Is that what should be done now? In as much as the 60 lawmakers who came together to call for this, they're looking at 2031, when essentially they should be done with their tenure. But should we be looking at having a change of system of government in Nigeria? Get on Facebook, Nigeria Info 92.3 PH. Drop your comments there. You can also send a message via WhatsApp to 0809 030 6416. 0809 030 6416. And also get on X, Nigeria Info PH. Let's hear from you as well. All right, talking about accountability of government officials, because if we are talking about how expensive the presidential system of government is, Nigeria's biggest issue is corruption, and it's a matter of people just refusing to be accountable. How would the parliamentary system even ensure that happens, that government officials are accountable? In what ways?
There's no guarantee under any system at all that some of the things, some of the loopholes that generate corruption will be plugged. It's not there at all. But then the proclivity of having such incidents is lower in the parliamentary system than in the presidential system.
How so?
And it is because the prime minister, who is the head of government, is a member of the legislature. He's chosen from the legislative arm of government, and he reports to them. They make virtually every approval for anything he does. If he goes out of their way, it is easy for them to convene and pass a vote of no confidence in him. So they are in proper control. In a presidential system, who controls the president? You think the National Assembly can control the president to the extent that the legislature can in a parliamentary system? I don't think so. And that's why the president will do a lot of things and get away with it. Buhari is a very good example of that. He could wake up in the morning and take a decision, and that is it. He could wake up in the morning and say, today the Chief Justice of the country will be out. and the process will be kick-started and it will go. But one thing I find a little skeptical about is the time frame of which these people are, anything worth doing is worth doing well. Why recourse to that very long period of this thing for implementation? It's something that can be done in a few years if they are really serious about it. And I very much doubt if they are carrying the Senate along with them, which is very important. And because if they have them in their kitty, then they have started a thought process to having this country move from the darkness that has been cast on us by the presidential system, very, very expensive. It allocates ineluctable power on people and individuals in a manner that can turn them into a Frankenstein monster. It is highly expensive, like I said, and if they can kickstart the process, the earlier the better to save the democratic system.
Okay, I would like some kind of examples, perhaps. You've mentioned a few, but maybe more, some historical or international examples that could perhaps shed more light on how the parliamentary system is more of a benefit, or maybe even some of the drawbacks, of having to that kind of
Britain
transition.
is a living example. They have not checked their choice for that system. You see, the British Prime Minister is always there in the House of Commons arguing. You get challenged every now and then if it gets into the bad books of the guys. And you see how a lot of the prime ministers, 2-3 years back, they were resigning, so we are throwing in the towel, and new prime ministers were coming. If you lack in capacity, it can be easily identified in a parliamentary system where you are with your peers, your fellow legislators, who will understand you, who will understand your capacity, your capability, and who will know that a time has come to get you out, and they will get you out. If you want to have yourself out with ignominy, they will do it very well. If you want to have it with respect, they ask you to tender your resignation, and there you go. You can't have that in the presidential system of government. You can't even think about impeachment under our system. It's not that it's not possible, but going by the enormous powers that reside in the hands of the president and the governors, it will be very, very, very difficult. I think it was this gentleman, the former naval officer who was governor, attempts were made to impeach him. And at the end of the day, it's a long story anyway, but Nyako, Morotala Nyako, and you saw the games that played from left, right, center, and all that. At the end of the day, it got to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said that impeachment was faulty. That time he had already left office. When Wike was governor here, will you dare think about impeachment against him? Things like that, because of the enormous power that resides in these. I said they are almost becoming strongholds of political power, forces of power. At the end of the day, that it will be very, very difficult to take anything out of their hand and expect that you get a governor or a president to tender his resignation or to be out of office through an impeachment process.
Even generally, people, even commissioners don't just up and resign in government. In Nigeria today, if someone is not delivering, they just don't resign. How much more?
That's it. The examples are rife. Parliamentary system pertains more to unitary systems anyway. But then you can fine-tune it and maybe restructure it to fit into a federal system, as Ghana did. And a whole lot of other countries, Australia, New Zealand, most members of the Commonwealth, those countries that were colonized by Britain, they say practices, and I think it's a much more better. The good thing about it is that people representation is given paramountcy. You don't wake up in the morning and say this is how it should go, and that is how it should go. It's just people power is expressed more in a parliamentary system. Somebody may have a contrary opinion, but I'm entitled to my own. But there's some of these excesses that we are saying that's pushing the country to the precipice. You see less of them. It is not that they will totally go away, but you see less of them in a parliamentary system. There's a Westminster system of government and the presidential The only thing we have to do is, it is very, very proper that whichever system you want to practice, you must have people who are well enabled and with the proper orientation, with the proper culture, with the proper character, with a sense of selflessness, with a sense that leadership is all about service. Selfless service is not an opportunity to make money. And that's where we are getting it wrong.
So even if we have that system, the parliamentary system, people will have to still elect the members of parliament?
Of course.
So there will be godfathers somewhere who would have some kind of say?
It will be just impossible because people elect, if the electoral process is okay, if it is all right, people will elect and they go there and amongst themselves, the elector is going to be the president, the prime minister.
But today in Nigeria, we still have elections and we see the way things go.
Well, in a parliamentary system, I will not say that flood elections cannot happen.
Okay.
The electoral process is one stream, and it's just the same thing. We had a lot of flawed elections during the First Republic. We know what happened in the West. They had the NPC in charge of the North. The political parties were divided amongst the three ethnic national groups. The Igbos had the NCNC, the Yorubas had the Action Party, and then the NPC, and the one that took control of the Senate at that time, the Prime Minister was Tafawa Balewa, and they wanted to have inroads into the West, and that caused a lot of mayhem in parts of the East as well, and this culminated to the killings and all these events that led to the Civil War. It's not that it's insulated from it, but it gets a little more minimal because you have executives that can be under check and control.
Okay, so because the focus seemed to be on the executive only, right? And I'm just thinking about what has happened, what is still happening even in Rivers State right now, the whole political issue with the State Assembly and the governor, where it seems a couple of persons who do not like the way the governor is handling things are rising up against him. And it's as if it's not necessarily for the people. Because you're saying in parliamentary system, the members, they're more like representing the people. But then you're seeing people who they're not doing whatever they're doing for the people. It's for their own political gain.
It is only in a presidential system that you can have that kind of setting. Where within an executive system, you have people who are loyal to the governor and others are loyal to another person altogether. The governor, who is supposed to be the chief executive in a state, it is impossible for that to happen in a parliamentary or Westminster type of government, because the whole thing about exercise of executive power in a Westminster style is loyalty to the parliament. Parliament is supreme. And when you begin to look at this kind of scenario,
what if the parliament has been bought over?
Bought over by who?
Some political godfather?
Nothing is impossible in Nigeria, but I know that the models that I've looked at, it's never happened. But I think it's rather bizarre to conceive that it's possible for one to be a cabinet, a government department of a state, and some commissioners are loyal to one person, others are loyal to the other person, and it's only possible because a situation arises where the governor could just put the whole legislature in his pocket. We've seen that happen, and put them under his whims and caprices, and run everybody everywhere, including the local government system and what have you. The presidential system allows for all that, but I very strongly doubt if it is possible, if that can be achieved in a parliamentary system.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. OGWUCHE. Well, let's get to the phone lines now. Should Nigeria change its current system of government? That's the question. We're talking about lawmakers calling for transition from presidential to parliamentary system of government. The numbers to call are 0817-923-0002, 0817-923-0002, or 0817-923-0003, 0817-923-0003. You can also call 0817-923-0003. 0809-030-6407 or send a message via WhatsApp to 0809-030-6416. We're also taking messages on Facebook and X. Nigeria Info 92.3 PH. All right, we have Ezekiel calling from Ubumini. Welcome. Go on, please.
Constance, greetings to your guests here in the studio.
Ezekiel, go on.
If I may ask, changing presidential system to parliamentary system in this state of the nation, what would it change comparing to the pattern or the system of government our colonial masters left for us? If you ask me, you said that since the first political leaders gave us our independence, gave us the leadership we needed as at that time, if these current politicians are the same people to pilot the affairs of this nation, everything will be the same thing. There will be no change.
All right, thank you, Ezekiel. Hello, Hector from Obogoro. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening.
It's Constance, actually. Go on.
Good evening, Constance. My opinion and question, they said if you want to change society, I think the first thing to do is to change the people mindset, attitudinal change. So, we have experimented the parliamentary system of government. We have experimented military federalism. And currently, we are experimenting presidential system. And we are yet to know which one is best suited for Nigeria as a country. Now, we have not asked, or I don't know if some of us have asked, the British, UK run a parliamentary system, and it is perfect for them, it is good for them. The US is running a presidential system, and it is good for them. Why is that of Nigeria not good? Why is that of Nigeria not working out? To me, I don't think it is a system that we are running. It is the human beings, we Nigerians, attitudinal change. I don't think it is a system, because even if we change the system to the parliamentary system that some persons are calling for, will that change the situation we have? The problem we have is corruption.
All right, thank you very much. OGWUCHE Justice on WhatsApp says, I get pissed off when people talk about restructuring the current system, or when people talk about restructuring, the current system is the best for this country. But corruption is the issue we are to deal with. Because if you restructure Nigeria to a family unit level, yet corruption wouldn't make it work. South has many development agencies, states, LG, NDDC, Ministry of Niger Delta. Is South more developed than northern part of the country? OGWUCHE Justice, that's your message. Yes, I totally agree that Nigeria should change her system of government, because this one we are in is not working. If church cannot change you, then you change church. Kelechi K. Omubiko, that's your message. All the national conferences held in this country, none of the suggested items were ever put into practice. Nigeria will never think of going into parliamentary system of government, because they know what they are gaining from the costly presidential system of government. Grace is calling from Okbolu. Hello, Grace.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening. Go on, please.
Okay, I want to say that your guest. Hello?
Grace, I'm listening.
Your guest has not said anything about the judiciary.
Okay, hold on, Grace. Before you tow that path, I asked a question and I would like you to answer that.
Okay.
So the question is, should Nigeria change her current system of government?
I still believe that as long as this crop of politicians are around, they will do everything, just as he was setting examples with the kind of people holding us to ransom, holding us hostage to their wills. I'm still believing that it may not except this crop of people are taken away. I mean, totally taken away like Jerry Rollins did. That's what I am advocating.
All right. Thank you very much for calling, Grace. Ida from Nkoro, you'll be my last caller for now. Hello, Ida. Go on.
This is my sister.
Welcome. Go ahead.
You is to see the old ones and people like us who that are been sharp to change Nigeria. And one day to come together as they are calling to pray for Nigeria. Want to pray one day for this radio station because I know that this radio station is the best radio station that carry news that does not play music. They always
Okay, Ida from Nkoro.
If we pray, Nigeria will be better. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you for calling. So he's calling for prayers. Good evening, Madam Constance and Chief OGWUCHE. I think we don't need to change any system. We need to change the kind of people we take into public office. Irrespective of the system we run, if we have immoral characters in public office, they would devise ways of cheating the system. Let's look at the office of the Attorney General of the state or federation. The powers given to the persons in that office are very enormous. Your guest is a lawyer and must understand the enormity. Yet, the framers of the Constitution were very clear in Section 174, subsection 3, that the holder must have regard to the public interest, the interest of justice, and the need to prevent abuse of legal process. Text from Oyibo. Sorry, I can't continue your message right now. We have to go on a commercial break. When I come back, I'll finish up and then we'll wrap up the conversation. Do stay tuned.